Top 5 Space Conspiracy Theories. Number 1. The moon landing was a hoax. The granddaddy of all space conspiracy theories has to be that the moon landings were faked on a soundstage. Those who believe the moon landings were hoaxes say that the United States lacked the technology necessary to transport humans to the moon and back. They claim that NASA faked the landings in order to make people believe the U.S. had fulfilled President John F. Kennedy's promise to land a man on the moon before 1970. What evidence do these skeptics cite? For one thing, on the lunar landing videos, you can't see any stars in the sky. NASA says that's because the moon's surface and the astronauts' suits were so reflective that it was too bright for the camera to pick up the comparatively faint stars. Another point theorists make is that while planting the American flag in lunar soil, the flag appears to wave. With no air in space, how is that possible? NASA says that the astronauts rotated the flag's pole back and forth while planting it so that it would remain upright. The rotation of the pole caused the flag to move back and forth as if rippling in the breeze even though there's no air on the moon. NASA says that there's plenty of evidence that man landed on the moon. There are photos, videos and testimonials from the dozen astronauts who have set foot on the moon's surface. The astronauts returned with soil and rock samples, which NASA also cites as physical evidence of our presence on the moon. Some hardcore conspiracy theorists maintain that all of this evidence is fake or came from unmanned missions to the moon. That's the real problem with conspiracy theories in general, there's no real way to convince people who believe in them that they might be wrong. The theorists may claim that any evidence contradicting their ideas was fabricated in an effort to cover up the truth. They may also argue that the lack of evidence to support their beliefs is due to the government, or some other responsible party, taking great pains to remove all evidence from view. In other words, arguing with some theorists is like saying heads you win, tails I lose. Nina's unparalleled destructive power derived not from its winds but from the catastrophic flooding it triggered. Indeed, the typhoon had already spent most of its strength crossing Taiwan's central mountain range and had weakened to a tropical storm by the time it struck China. Source: Wayman. As it stalled over the mainland, Nina cranked out 42 inches, 1,060 millimeters, of rain in 24 hours, a year's worth of central China's precipitation, delivered in a day. The deluge collapsed the Bangkeo Dam and destroyed more than 60 other dams along with it. Source: Xinhua. As the dams buckled, a 6.2-mile wide, 10-kilometer wide, 9.823-foot high, 3.7-meter high, wave blasted across the lowlands at speeds approaching 31 miles per hour, 50 kilometers per hour, destroying an area 34 miles, 55 kilometers, long and 9.3 miles, 15 kilometers, wide. Source: CCTV. The floods swept tens of thousands of survivors downstream and submerged thousands of square kilometers of land, killing 26,000 people. An additional 145,000 later died of disease and famine. Some estimates place the death toll closer to 230,000. Sources: Goldstein, Xinhua. In all, Nina collapsed almost 6 million buildings and affected 11 million people, running up an economic toll of $1.2 billion. Source: Wayman. In lives destroyed, and physical and economic impact, Nina truly towers among other typhoons as our most destructive storm. Number 2. The face on Mars. In the 1970s, NASA launched two spacecraft called Viking 1 and Viking 2 on missions to Mars. Both spacecraft photographed the surface of Mars and sent images back to NASA. In one photo, a hill on Mars' surface looked a little like a face. Author and conspiracy theorist Richard Hoagland went a step further and said that it didn't just look like a face, it was definitely a face. Hoagland theorized that an alien civilization colonized Mars and that the face was evidence of an alien city in the Cydonia region. When other satellites photographed the surface of Mars, the pictures of the Cydonia region revealed that the face was just an eroded mesa. Hoagland argued that the equipment NASA used to take the subsequent photos wasn't as accurate as the Viking equipment. He also claimed that NASA doctored the images, making them look less like a face. Source: Hoagland. We've since had a very good look at Mars's surface, and the face turns out to be an illusion created by hills and shadows. Humans tend to recognize distinct shapes and patterns even from vague or indistinct shapes and objects. If you've ever seen a cloud that reminds you of a particular animal, that's an example. We call this tendency pareidolia, and there are several examples on Mars. Number 3. Flat Earth Society. In 1956, Samuel Shelton founded a society that subscribed to a theory about the shape of the Earth, namely, that it's flat. Shelton based his theory upon what he called common sense and personal observation. He called the scientific evidence for a globe-shaped Earth dogmatic, meaning scientists were making this claim without adequate evidence. Later, when people showed him pictures of the Earth taken by satellites, Shelton claimed the photos were fake. He and the members of his society continued to support the idea that the Earth is flat and that those who disagree are part of a conspiracy to keep the truth about the Earth hidden. Shelton died in 1971, and leadership of the society passed to Charles Johnson. Johnson led the society until his death in 2001. Without leadership, the society fell apart. Critics of the Flat Earth Society say that its members simply deny any evidence that conflicts with their worldview without offering real alternative hypotheses. Keep in mind that humans have known Earth was round for centuries. The ancient Greeks learned by measuring shadows that the planet's surface must be curved. That led to astronomers concluding that the world was round. The myth that people during Christopher Columbus's journeys believed Earth to be flat has no real basis. In fact, the argument was really about how big Earth was, not whether or not it was flat. Number 4. The USA-193 spy satellite. On December 14, 2006, Vandenberg Air Force Base launched a rocket carrying a satellite called USA-193. The satellite was part of the National Reconnaissance Office's (NRO) intelligence program. In other words, it was a spy satellite. The satellite had trouble maintaining orbit, and by late 2007 the Air Force determined that it would soon crash to Earth. The U.S. government announced in January 2008 that it intended to shoot the satellite down with a missile. Why shoot down the satellite? The government said it was because the satellite's fuel tank contained hydrazine, which is toxic. If the fuel tank survived re-entry, it could land on a populated area. On February 20, 2008, the U.S. fired a missile and struck USA-193. Some people believe the government didn't tell the entire story. They say that the government also wanted to prevent the satellite from falling into another country's possession. Others go even further and suggest the United States only wanted to show the world that it's capable of shooting down a satellite with the missile. In 2007, China destroyed a weather satellite with the missile, calling it a test. That test spread debris in an area around the Earth filled with other satellites, endangering those machines. By contrast, the United States' approach was to fire on USA-193 when it reached a low enough orbit to minimize danger to other satellites. Was the U.S. government using USA-193 as an excuse to respond to China's test missile? Some people think so. Number 5. Planet X. Does our solar system contain a giant, unnamed planet? It does, according to the Planet X theory. This theory says that our solar system has a 10th planet, if you count Pluto as a planet, otherwise the mystery planet is number 9. The planet is supposed to be enormous and on an orbital path that will bring it close to Earth soon. Proponents of this theory cite earthquake and weather data as evidence of this planet's growing influence on Earth. They also claim that the government is forcing observatories to close to keep the planet's approach secret and prevent panic. Several astronomers have said that there's no evidence for the Planet X theory, and that if the planet did exist, humans would be able to see it even without a telescope. Even if you did need a telescope to see this planet, very little would stop amateur astronomers from seeing it. Keeping countless amateur stargazers quiet about such a massive discovery would be impossible. Unless the world's governments have collaborated in secret planet-sized stealth technology, this theory seems pretty flimsy.